Future. Part 1. Hug. Every morning, millions of people wake up and reach for the same object before they even fully open their eyes. Not a book, not a plan for the day, not a conversation, not even a moment of silence. A phone, a small screen glowing in the dark. At first, it feels harmless, just a quick check, a few notifications, a few messages, a few seconds of scrolling, but those few seconds become minutes. Those minutes become habits, and those habits begin shaping something much bigger than most people realize. Because your phone is not only taking your time, it is taking your attention. And attention is one of the most valuable things you have. It shapes what you think about, what you notice, what you remember, what you care about, what you work on, what kind of person you become. And when your attention is constantly broken, scattered, redirected, and consumed, something serious can begin to happen. You become less able to focus, less able to think deeply, less able to stay with difficult things, less able to build anything meaningful over long periods of time. You become more reactive, more distracted, more restless, more dependent on stimulation, more vulnerable to impulse. And because all of this happens slowly, most people do not notice the full cost until years have already passed. They just feel different, more tired, more fragmented, more mentally noisy, more emotionally unstable. They want to focus, but cannot stay with one thing for long. They want peace, but their mind keeps reaching for stimulation. They want a better future, but their daily attention keeps being spent somewhere else. That is the danger. The phone does not usually destroy your life dramatically. It does it quietly, one interruption at a time, one scroll at a time, one broken work session at a time, one distracted conversation at a time, one restless evening at a time, one year at a time. And because the damage is quiet, people keep treating it like a small issue, a bad habit, a modern inconvenience, something normal. But this is not only about distraction, it is about direction. Because where your attention goes, your life begins to follow. If your attention belongs to everything except what matters, then your future begins slipping away in pieces. Not, not because you're incapable, not because you're lazy, but because you're being trained to live in fragments. That is one of the great hidden struggles of modern life. People think they are losing time, but often they are losing something deeper: their ability to choose what deserves their mind, their ability to stay present, their ability to think without constant interruption, their ability to build a life from intention instead of reaction. That is why this matters so much. Your phone is not just a device, it is an environment, a system of endless stimulation, a machine designed to compete for your mind. And if you do not learn how to protect your attention, it will slowly become harder to build the future you say you want. Because the future is not built only by goals, it is built by what receives your best attention every day. That is why your phone is stealing your attention and your future. Part 2, Introduction plus CTA. We live in a world where phones are always within reach, in our hands, on our desk, next to our beds, in our pockets, at dinner tables, on public transport, during work, during study, during silence, even during conversations. They have become so normal, so constant, and so deeply woven into modern life that many people no longer question how much power this device now have over their minds. And to be fair, phones are not purely harmful. They connect us to people we love. They give us maps, music, information, education, communication, and useful tools. They help us work, learn, navigate, create. In many ways, they have made life easier. But convenience often hides cost. And in the case of modern phones, that cost can be enormous. Because these devices are not only useful, they are also addictive by design. They are built to keep you checking, tapping, refreshing, scrolling, returning. Not once in a while, repeatedly. And when something repeatedly interrupts all your attention, trains your mind toward stimulation, and makes your depth feel harder and harder to sustain, it begins changing more than your schedule. It begins changing your inner life, your thought patterns, your patience, your concentration, your emotional baseline, your relationship with boredom, your ability to stay alone with your own mind. That is why this subject matters. That is not just about screen time, it is about attention. And attention is one of the foundations of a meaningful life. In this video, we will explore how phones quietly take control of attention, why this happens so easily, how it affects focus, emotions, relationships, and long-term potential, and what you can do if you want to take your mind back. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss future videos exploring the deepest challenges of modern life. Now let's just begin with something simple but important. To understand why phones have become so powerful, we first need to understand what attention really is and why it matters so much. Part 3, Background and Context. Attention is one of the most important forces in human life. It may not look dramatic. You cannot hold it in your hand. You cannot always measure it clearly, but it shapes nearly everything. What you pay attention to becomes what fills your mind. What fills your mind shapes your habits, your emotions, your decisions, your standards, your memory, your work, and eventually your life. This is why attention is never just a small mental detail. It is a gatekeeper, a filter, a source of power. If you can direct your attention well, you can learn difficult things, build valuable skills, create meaningful work, listen deeply, think clearly, stay present with people, make wiser decisions, move toward the future you actually want. But if your attention is constantly broken, constantly redirected, constantly hijacked by whatever is loudest, easiest, or most stimulating, then your life begins to lose depth. Now your days are not shaped by our highest priorities, they are shaped by interruptions, impulse, notifications, cravings. The next thing, asking for your mind. For most of human history, attention was still challenged by many things: noise, fear, urgency, survival, temptation. But modern technology introduced something new: a portable device designed not only to serve your intentions, but to compete with them. A device carrying messages, videos, breaking news, social comparison, endless entertainment, artificial urgency, social rewards, and infinite novelty. And unlike other forms of distraction, this one is always nearby, always available, always waiting to fill even the smallest empty moment. Standing in line, waiting for food, riding in the car, walking alone, feeling awkward, feeling bored, feeling tired, feeling anxious, feeling lonely. The phone is there, ready to erase silence, ready to interrupt discomfort, ready to pull you out of the present and into a loop of low effort stimulation. This changes something important because attention grows according to how it is used. A person who practices deep focus becomes better at deep focus. A person who practices constant interruption becomes easier to interrupt. A person who repeatedly escapes discomfort with quick stimulation becomes less able to sit with discomfort long enough to do meaningful things. That is where the issue becomes serious. Your phone is not only distracting you in isolated moments, it is training your nervous system, training your expectations, training your attention span, training your reward system, and unless that training is interrupted, it begins shaping what kind of future you are mentally able to build. Part 4, Main Story. Segment 1, Why Your Phone is So Hard to Resist. There is a reason people keep reaching for their phones, even when they do not really want to, even when they are tired of it, even when they know it is wasting time, even when they say they want to stop. The reason is not only quick willpower, it is design. Modern phones, and especially the apps inside them, are built around one core principle: keep attention coming back. This happens through notifications, colors, sounds, vibration, infinite scroll, autoplay, unread message badges, short form content, algorithmic fees, variable rewards. You do not always know what you're going to get when you unlock your phone. Maybe something exciting, maybe something new, maybe validation, maybe entertainment, maybe a message, maybe a surprise. That unpredictability matters because the human brain is highly responsive to uncertain rewards. It pulls you back in again and again. This is one reason checking your phone becomes almost automatic. You're not always checking because there's something important there. You're often checking because your brain has learned to expect the possibility of something stimulating. And possibility is enough. That is how loops are built. You feel a little bored, a little uncomfortable, a little uncertain, a little emotionally flat. You check your phone, you get a small reward, a laugh, a distraction, a message, a fresh image, a sense of movement. Now, your brain learns the pattern. Discomfort appears. Phone relieves it. The more this repeats, the stronger the loop becomes. That is why many people no longer reach for their phone consciously. They reach automatically, reflexively, before they even fully notice what they are feeling. And this matters because every automatic behavior shapes identity. The person begins becoming someone who struggles to remain in an empty space without stimulation. Someone who cannot sit through tiny moments of boredom. Someone whose first response to emotional discomfort is digital escape. That pattern is not harmless because meaningful work, emotional stability, deep relationships, and thoughtful living all require some ability to stay present without immediately feeding into stimulation. If your phone keeps straining you away from that ability, the cost becomes much bigger than wasted minutes. It becomes a reshaping of your mind. Segment 2. Your phone is teaching your brain to hate boredom. Boredom is to play a different role in human life. It was uncomfortable, yes, but it also created space. Space for imagination, reflection, observation, rest, wandering through, problem solving, creative insight. Now, boredom is treated like an emergency. The moment nothing is happening, the hand moves. The screen lights up. The mind escapes. At first, this feels efficient. Why be bored when you can be entertained? Why wait in silence when you can consume something? Why sit with your own mind when you can fill the gap instantly? But boredom is not useless. It has a hidden function. It trains patience. It allows thought to settle. It gives your mind room to process things more deeply. It lets unresolved questions rise. It lets feelings surface. It lets ideas connect. When boredom disappears completely, something else disappears with it: mental space. And without mental space, life becomes crowded, noisy, shallow, reactive. This is one of the most important effects of constant phone use. It reduces your tolerance for unstimulated life. Now, ordinary reality starts feeling too slow, too quiet, too plain, too empty. Your brain begins expecting constant input. So reading feels harder, deep work feels harder, conversations feel less exciting, rest feel less restful. Even walking without your phone can start feeling strange. That is a serious shift, because the human mind needs some ability to remain with slow reality if it wants to do meaningful things. Not everything valuable is instantly stimulating. Learning is not always stimulating. Exercise is not always stimulating. Writing is not always stimulating. Healing is not always stimulating. Being present with another person is not always stimulating in a flashy way. But these things are part of a good life. If your phone keeps training your brain to need novelty every few seconds, the ordinary but meaningful parts of life begin feeling harder to stay with. That is not just a private problem, it is a future problem. Because your future depends in part on whether you can remain present long enough to build something that does not give instant rewards. Segment 3: Constant checking destroys their focus. A lot of people think they still know how to focus. They believe the phone is just a side distraction, something they can manage whenever needed. But the problem with phone distraction is not only the big obvious breaks, it is the tiny repeated fractures. You sit down to work, then check one message, then return, then check one notification, then return, then open one app for 1 second, then return. It feels manageable, but deep focus does not work well in fragments. Every time your attention is broken, there is a cost. The mind has to reorient. reload context, rebuild concentration, re-enter the thought process. This takes energy, and when it happens repeatedly, the quality of thinking changes. You may still be working, but your mind is operating at a shallower level. You're less immersed, less creative, less precise, less patient, less able to connect complex ideas. This is why people can spend long hours in front of work and still produce surprisingly little. Their time is present, but their attention is not. And attention is what does the real work. This matters even more in a world where valuable work increasingly depends on the ability to think clearly for a sustained period. Writing, studying, programming, designing, planning, building a business, learning complex skills. All of this require depth. And depth requires uninterrupted attention. If your phone keeps breaking that attention, then your most valuable cognitive work begins weakening. Not because you are incapable, but because your environment is straining you toward shallowness. This creates a painful contradiction. People want extraordinary results, but they are living with extraordinarily interrupted minds. They want success, mastery, skill, clarity, but their days are organized around constant mental fragmentation. That is one reason phones rightly affect the future. The future belongs, in many cases, to the people who can still think deeply in a distracted world. And if your phone keeps making deep thought harder, then it is not only stealing your time, it is stealing part of the advantage your future would require. Segment 4. Your emotional life becomes more unstable. Phones do not only affect concentration, they also affect emotional life. And this is one of the most overlooked parts of the problem. A phone exposes you to too many emotional triggers in too little time. A message, a headline, a video, a comparison, a crisis, a joke, a conflict, a tragedy, a success story, a beautiful face, an outrage clip, a political argument, a luxury lifestyle, a breakup story, a motivational quote, a war update, all within minutes. This is not emotionally normal. The nervous system was not designed to process this much emotional switching this quickly and this often. As a result, many people begin living in low-level emotional agitation. They are more restless, more reactive, more mentally crowded, more likely to compare themselves, more likely to feel behind, more likely to feel like they should be doing more, becoming more, owning more, fixing more, even when nothing is actually wrong in the room they are standing in. This is part of what makes phone life so exhausting. It floods the mind with inputs that feel urgent, personal, or emotionally charged, even when they have nothing to do with your actual priorities. Now, your emotions are being shaped not only by your real life, but by whatever the feed decides to place in front of you. That weakens emotional stability because stability requires some coherence, some slowness, some ability to stay with one thing long enough to understand what you actually feel. But the phone creates constant emotional jumping. Before you can process one feeling, another arrives. Before you can calm down, another piece of stimulation enters. Before you can think clearly, your mind is already reacting again. This is why many people feel strangely tired after spending time on their phone. Not only because of time loss, but because their nervous system has been constantly activated. Even entertainment can do this. Even relaxing scrolling can do this because your mind is still watching, switching, comparing, reacting, and absorbing. And over time, that emotional instability changed how you live. You become less patient with silence, less tolerant of stillness, less connected to your own real emotional state. And once that happens, you become easier to manipulate, easier to distract, and easier to keep in cycles of reaction. Segment 5. Phones weaken presence in relationships. One of the saddest effects of phone dependence is what it does to human presence. A person may still be physically near others, at the dinner table, in the same room, walking together, sitting beside someone they love. But mentally, they are elsewhere, half in the moment, half in the device, half in the room, half in the feed. This seems small, but presence is one of the deepest gifts people can give each other. To listen fully, to look at someone without the pull of another screen, to stay in a conversation without checking for something more stimulating, to sit in silence together without needing digital escape. These things build trust, warmth, intimacy, memory, human depth. When phones interrupt them repeatedly, relationships start thinning. Not always dramatically, quietly. People feel less heard, less important, less deeply met. Even brief interruptions matter because they signal something. They say, "You have my attention," but not fully. And full attention is a form of love. This is why constant phone presence damage more than manners. It damages connections. A person may tell themselves they are multitasking, still listening, still present enough. But deep down, both people often know the difference between partial attention and real presence. And this matters because strong relationships are built from repeated moments of attention, repeated interest, repeated undivided presence. If those moments keep getting broken, something valuable begins to weaken. That is one more reason phones affects the future. The future is not only built by career and productivity, it is also built by the quality of your relationships. And relationships cannot become deep if attention is always elsewhere. Segment 6. The phone makes comparison feel endless. Before smartphones and algorithmic feeds, comparison still existed. But now it is constant, portable, personalized, endless. A person wakes up and sees the achievements, beauty, wealth, relationships, travel, bodies, success, and lifestyles of hundreds of people before breakfast, even if they knew some of it is curated, even if they know it is filtered, even if they know it is incomplete. The emotional effect can still be powerful because the mind compares automatically. It asks silence-free questions. Am I behind? Am I doing enough? Why does their life look better? Why am I not there yet? Why do I feel ordinary? Why do I look like this? Why do I live like this? These comparisons accumulate, and constant exposure makes them hard to escape. Now, your standards may no longer be shaped by your actual values. They may be shaped by whatever image appears most often, whatever aesthetic performs best, whatever life looks most impressive online. This is dangerous because it disconnects people from reality, from gratitude, from groundedness, from the specific life they are actually responsible for building. Comparison turns attention outward in an unhealthy way. Instead of asking, what matters most for my real life? The mind begins asking, how do I measure up? That shift is expensive because a life shaped by comparison becomes unstable. You stop building from within. You start reacting from outside. You stop following your path. You start trying to keep up with everyone else's image. And phones makes that easier than ever. Not once in a while, constantly. That is one way attention gets stolen. Instead of being invested in your own growth, it gets trapped in others' appearance of growth. And while you're watching, comparing, and reacting, your own life waits. Segment 7. Your phone reduces your ability to be alone with yourself. One of the quietest but more important flaws of constant phone use is this. Many people are losing the ability to be alone with themselves. Not physically alone, mentally alone. To sit without input, to walk without consuming, to wait without reaching, to feel without instantly escaping, to think without interruption, to hear their own mind clearly. This matters because self-knowledge grows in part through unfilled space. Reflection requires space. Honesty requires space. Grief requires space. Insight requires space. Real decisions often require silence. But if every empty moment is immediately filled by your phone, your inner life begins getting crowded out. Now there is less time to notice what you actually feel, less time to understand what your life has become, less time to recognize what needs to change, less time to hear the quieter truths that only rise when the noise lowers. This is why so many people can spend years feeling vaguely dissatisfied but never fully understand why. Their attention is never quite long enough. Their mind is always filled before it can fully speak. That is a profound loss, because some of the most important truths in life do not arrive through stimulation. They arrive through reflection, through stillness, through boredom, endured long enough to become awareness. The phone keeps interrupting that process, and the result is not only distraction, it is disconnection from self. A person may know many things happening in the world, many trends, many updates, many opinions, but know less and less about what is happening inside them. That is not wisdom, that is overload. And overload makes it harder to live intentionally, because if you cannot hear yourself clearly, then whatever is loudest around you begins shaping the life you live. Segment 8. The phone steals the future by stealing repeated hours. When people think about phone use, they often think in small units. A few minutes here, a quick check there, a short scroll before sleep, a little video while waiting. This makes the problem feel minor, but the future is not only shaped by dramatic decisions, it is shaped by repeated use of time. And repeated phone use consumes enormous amounts of time in invisible ways. Not only the time spent looking directly at the screen, also the time lost recovering from distraction, the time lost restarting focus, the time lost to emotional exhaustion after overstimulation, the time lost to sleep disruption from late night use, the time lost because a short break turned into an hour. These losses add up, and they add up into years. Years that could have been used to read, learn, train, build, create, rest properly, think, heal, connect. Instead, those years are often scattered around thousands of tiny moments of digital drift. That is how the future gets stolen, not with one obvious disaster, but with countless small transfers of attention away from what matters more. This is why the issue is so serious. Anything you want deeply, skill, strength, peace, mastery, stability, meaningful work, requires repeated hours, and repeated hours require protected attention. If your phone keeps taking those hours in pieces, then the distance between you and your better future quietly grows. Not because your future disappeared, but because the attention needed to build it keeps getting consumed somewhere else. Part 5. Bigger picture implications. The phone is not a problem only because it wastes time. It is the problem because it changed the structure of human attention. And once attention changes, everything built on attention begins changing too. Work changes, thought changes, learning changes, conversation changes, rest changes, memory changes, identity changes. This is why the issue goes beyond personal productivity. It reaches into culture itself. A distracted society becomes easier to manipulate, easier to entertain endlessly, easier to keep reactive instead of reflective, easier to fill with noise. When depth becomes harder, quick takes dominates. When silence disappears, thought becomes thinner. When boredom becomes intolerable, people becomes easier to feed with endless novelty. This has moral consequences, political consequences, relational consequences, creative consequences. Because a world full of distracted people is not just a world with lower focus. It is a world with less patience, less depth, less reflection, and often less truth. Phones did not create every human weakness, but they amplify many of them. Impulsiveness, comparison, escapism, vanity, restlessness, avoidance, and because the device is always with us, the amplification becomes constant. That is why reclaiming attention is not only a lifestyle improvement, it is a serious act of self defense, a way of protecting your mind from being shaped entirely by systems that profit from their distraction. A way of deciding that your attention belongs first to what matters, not to what is most addictive. And this matters because the future is becoming more and more divided between people who can protect their attention and people who cannot. Those who can protect it will likely think more clearly, work more deeply, learn faster, stay calmer, build better relationships, and shape their lives more intentionally. Those who cannot may still have talent, ideas, and potential, but their energy will keep being scattered by across systems designed to consume it. That is the larger picture. The battle for attention is not small. It is one of the defining struggles of modern life. Part 6. Conclusion. Your phone is not evil. It can help you, connect you, teach you, support you. But it is dangerous when you stop realizing what it is doing to your mind. Dangerous when it becomes your default response to every empty moment. Dangerous when it begins deciding where your attention goes more often than you do. Dangerous when it makes deep thought, real rest, and genuine presence harder to sustain. That is the real issue. Because attention is life. What you repeatedly attend to becomes what shapes you. And if your phone keeps taking your best attention, then it is taking something far more valuable than idle minutes. It is taking your ability to build, to think, to listen, to feel fully, to be here, to become the person your future requires. This does not happen dramatically. That is why so many people underestimate it. The phone does not always destroy ambition in obvious way. It softens, scatters it, interrupts it, weakens it. It does not always make you fail openly. Sometimes it just keeps you from going deep enough to do your best work. It does not always make you miserable. Sometimes it just makes you mentally crowded enough that peace becomes difficulty. That is how the theft works. Quietly, repeatedly, efficiency. But the good news is this: attention can be reclaimed, a mind can be recovered, focus can be rebuilt, silence can become tolerable again, presence can return, depth can return. You're not permanently ruined because you live in a distracted world. But you do need to take the problem seriously. You do need to stop treating the constant loss of attention as normal and harmless, because what you protect grows, and what you neglect gets taken. If you protect your attention, you protect your work, your peace, your relationships, your clarity, your future. If you do not, then your future will continue being shaped by whatever happens to capture your mind most easily. That is why this matters so much. Your phone is stealing your attention and your future, unless you decide to take them back. Part 7, Final CTA. So, what do you think is the biggest thing phones are stealing from people today? Is it focus, peace, sleep, relationships, ambitions, or the ability to be alone with their own minds? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification so you do not miss the next deep dive into the hidden forces shaping modern life. Because some of the biggest battles people face today are not happening on battlefields. They're happening quietly, inside the mind.